In September 1683, the gates of Vienna trembled under the menacing approach of one of the largest armies Europe had ever witnessed. The Ottoman Empire marched forward, bringing tens of thousands of soldiers with ambitions to expand its dominion into Central Europe. In the face of overwhelming odds, a coalition of European forces, led by the renowned Polish King John III Sobieski, took up arms to defend the city. This is a tale of courage, strategy, and heroism, set against the backdrop of a continent's fate hanging in the balance. The summer of 1683 was characterized by a palpable anxiety throughout Central Europe. Rumors of war spread swiftly, even outpacing caravans, as merchants along the Danube spoke of a formidable force gathering under the Sultan's banner. Initially dismissed as hyperbole, the stories soon proved true. As reports began to emerge, villages abandoned, churches reduced to ashes, and armies advancing. By June, the evidence was undeniable. The Ottoman Empire had set its sights firmly on Vienna once again. The army led by Kara Mustafa Pasha was unlike anything Europe had encountered in a century. Disease spread through the cramped quarters of the city as civilians huddled in churches and cellars during the bombardments. Yet, despite the dire circumstances, morale under Starhemberg's command remained resolute. He inspired both soldiers and civilians, asserting that Vienna would never surrender. Every time the Ottomans made advances, the defenders retaliated, burning siege works and harassing the enemy sappers. For nearly 2 months, Vienna endured. The Ottomans launched wave after wave of assaults, blasting holes in the walls only to be repelled by desperate defenders. Yet, for every breach, rubble, timber, and bodies filled the gaps as the Viennese fought to seal them. But across Europe, the cries for assistance were heard, and far to the north, a Polish king was already preparing to march. The reverberations of Ottoman cannon fire echoed throughout Vienna's walls, carrying a message that extended beyond the defense of a single city. Each explosion, each desperate message that slipped through the besieged fortress, served as a plea to Christendom. Help us, or we all shall fall. For Emperor Leopold I, who had abandoned Vienna in haste, the stakes could not have been higher. If the city fell, the Habsburg territories would be laid bare, endangering the very heart of the Holy Roman Empire. From Linz and Passau, he sent urgent appeals to princes, dukes, and kings across Europe. Initially, responses were lukewarm, as Christendom had often failed to unite against the Ottoman threat, mired instead in its own rivalries. Yet, in 1683, the tone shifted. The first to respond to Vienna's plea was not a king or an emperor, but Pope Innocent XI, From Rome, the pontiff viewed the siege not merely as a political crisis, but as a holy war. To him, the Ottoman advance represented the gravest threat to Christendom since the fall of Constantinople. He declared the defense of Vienna to be synonymous with the defense of Europe itself, urging rulers to set aside their differences and mount a new crusade. Through skillful diplomacy, persuasion, and promises of financial backing, Pope Innocent XI galvanized the formation of what would become known as the Holy League. His most significant achievement was securing the commitment of Polish King John III Sobieski to send his forces to rescue Vienna. Sobieski was no ordinary monarch. He was a seasoned commander celebrated for his previous victories against Ottoman and Tatar forces at the Battle of Chotin in 1673. Known among his soldiers as a king who fought alongside them, Sobieski was a figure of chivalric presence and strategic insight. When the plea for help arrived in Poland, he did not hesitate to act. Despite some noble concerns regarding the vulnerability of Poland, Sobieski proclaimed, "To save Vienna is to save Poland." By Sobieski's side came contingents from Bavaria, Saxony, Franconia, and Swabia, as well as pledged support from the fractured states of the Holy Roman Empire. By September 10th, Sobieski's army, some 70,000 strong, had crossed the Danube and ascended the hills overlooking Vienna. The long night of siege was finally ending. The day of battle had arrived. Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha was confident in his army's strength, but his overconfidence blinded him as he underestimated the resolve of Vienna's defenders and the ferocity of the Polish king determined to rescue them. From the heights of the Kahlenberg Ridge, King John III Sobieski surveyed the battlefield. Below him, the plains extended toward the city walls. Overshadowed by the immense Ottoman camp, its glittering tents and banners a testament to their might. To the west lay Vienna, scarred and smoldering, its damaged walls still defiantly standing. Sobieski understood that time was running out. Each hour increased the risk of Vienna's fall. But he also recognized the imperative of patience. The Allied forces, Poles, Austrians, Bavarians, Saxons, and more needed to be harmonized in action, their movements meticulously coordinated. A hasty strike could easily leave them divided and vulnerable. On that morning, Sobieski rallied his commanders, reminding them that this battle extended beyond Vienna. It was a fight for the very soul of Christendom. His words ignited a fire in their hearts. Today, we fight not for crowns or territories, but for our faith, our families, and the survival of Europe. The troops roared in approval, and the battle plan was set. The alliance would sweep down from the wooded hills, targeting the Ottoman flanks and pushing toward the city, while Sobieski prepared to lead the greatest cavalry charge Europe had ever seen. The battlefield was fraught with peril. To the east, the Ottomans had fortified their positions around Vienna, with trenches and siege lines forming veritable barriers of earth and fire. The northern approach was concealed by thick woods, complicating the Allied march. The terrain favored defense, yet Sobieski cleverly turned it to his advantage, masking his movements until the moment of attack. The Allied forces stretched across a wide formation, totaling nearly 70,000 men. On the left flank, Imperial troops under Charles of Lorraine advanced toward Vienna's northern defenses. In the center, German contingents surged through the forests, engaging Ottoman outposts. On the right flank, Sobieski concealed his 20,000 Polish cavalry, poised for the decisive strike. Meanwhile, the Ottomans surged forward to meet them, the Janissaries advancing with their tall white headdresses, marching in disciplined ranks, drums beating and battle cries echoing through the air. Cavalry units swept across the plains while Tatar horsemen flanked them like shadows. As midday approached, the battle erupted into a maelstrom of fury. Cannon fire resonated from both sides, smoke rising in choking clouds over the battlefield. Muskets cracked in harrowing volleys, mowing down waves of soldiers while swords clashed in frantic melee. Vienna itself entered the fray as Starhemberg sent desperate sorties against the Ottoman siege lines, igniting fires to disrupt their formations. The defenders, though half-starved and wounded, fought with a fierce determination, aware that salvation was now within reach. The battle raged on into the afternoon, with the Allied forces gradually gaining traction, pushing the Ottomans back from the ridges. Recognizing the precarious situation, Kara Mustafa ordered reinforcements into the fray, resolutely attempting to hold his ground. However, each wave of Ottoman resistance was met with increasing ferocity from the Allies. The moment of reckoning was approaching. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, Sobieski recognized his opportunity. The Ottoman lines, worn down from hours of conflict, had begun to falter. The Janissaries remained steadfast near the city, but the flanks were crumbling under the pressure. He turned to his Polish Hussars, the famed winged cavalry, their armor gleaming and magnificent feathers arching from their saddles. Behind them assembled ranks of heavy cavalry from across Europe, eager for the final charge. Raising his sword, Sobieski ordered the advance, calling forth a charge that would echo through the annals of history. The battlefield vibrated under the weight of thousands of men engaged in fierce combat. But as the sun sank low on September 12, 1683, a new sound arose above the din of battle, the thunderous pounding of hooves. On the slopes of Kahlenberg, hidden until that moment, the mightiest cavalry force in Europe prepared to descend upon the enemy. At the forefront was King John III Sobieski, the Lion of Poland, his gaze fixed on the sprawling Ottoman camp below. The moment had arrived for a decisive strike that would determine the fate of Vienna and perhaps the very future of Europe itself. Nearly 20,000 horsemen stood ready, Polish Hussars, German cuirassiers, and mounted contingents of the Holy League. Yet it was the Hussars who commanded attention, clad in brilliant armor with long lances and sabers at the ready. Their most distinguishing feature, the grand wooden frames fitted to their backs, adorned with eagle feathers arching like wings, created an awe-inspiring sight. In the wind, these wings rattled with an eerie hiss, a sound that instilled fear in men and horses alike. To friend and foe, they appeared less as soldiers and more as celestial warriors descended from the heavens. Sobieski himself took command of the right flank, positioning himself at the spearhead of the charge. Few kings in history would have dared such an undertaking, but Sobieski was not one to watch from a distance. The battlefield had reached a breaking point. The Allied infantry pressed against the Ottoman lines, forcing them back toward their encampments, but victory was still uncertain. The Janissaries remained tenacious near the city walls, their discipline holding even as the tide began to turn. Sobieski understood that one decisive blow was necessary to shatter the enemy's resolve. He turned to his men, raised his sword high, and invoked his battle cry. "In the name of God and the Blessed Virgin, charge for Vienna, charge for Poland, charge for Christendom." The trumpets sounded, echoing through the air. The ground shook as the charge commenced. The pounding of hooves resonated across the valley as the cavalry surged forward, dust rising in great clouds, sunlight glinting off armor and lances as this horde of horsemen gathered speed. From the heights of Kahlenberg they poured down in waves, unstoppable and ferocious. The earth trembled beneath them, and the clash of kingdoms hung in the balance, poised to reshape the destiny of Europe forevermore.